Hello, you beautiful people. Today we are here to talk about 5 players that I think you should trade for in your fantasy points leagues. So these are for various reasons. Either I think they're a great buy low opportunity, or if I just think their value is overall going to see an increase over the next coming weeks. So I'll go ahead, talk about the players, talk about trades I would make for them that are kind of realistic, who I would be okay with offering for them, and who I think would be a massive W if you can make the trade. But yeah, overall, hopefully it just helps you guys out in terms of looking at trade targets. I know at this time in the year, it's just like looking, if your team's not at the top of the league, you're just looking for like, who could I trade for that'll help me elevate my team to that level. But yeah, before we begin, as always, don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe if you're new. We're at like 2,100 subscribers right now, so pretty dope. Love to see it. Really appreciate all you guys for the support. And yeah, don't forget to join the Discord through the link in the description. And with that being said, let's just go ahead and get right into the video. Alright, so the first player on my list is James Harden. And this might be a bit of an obvious one, but it's just mainly due to the fact that Kevin Durant has just gone down with an injury and he's out for about 4 to 6 weeks, and I don't think they're going to be in any rush to bring him back. But in that time frame, I'm pretty confident that James Harden is going to be like the best, or at worst second best fantasy player in the league for that stretch of games, because like a lot of people that are new to fantasy aren't really aware, but when James Harden was on the Rockets, or like when he's the sole guy, I mean, there's Kyrie too for half of the games. Take that for what you will. But when he's like the number one option, man, he puts up like Nikola Jokic, Giannis numbers very consistently. Like he's neck and neck with those two. So yeah, I just feel like if I did not have James Harden on my team right now, I'm comfortable trading any of the other top 10 guys for him. I think this is a great opportunity because you're going to see Harden put up some astronomical fantasy numbers over the next few weeks. Like I know even recently put up 65, 64, and 72 fantasy points. And honestly, I am like pretty confident that that is going to continue. Like that trend's going to elevate. And he's probably going to be up or averaging over 50 fantasy points per game by the end of it. So I just think this is a great time to trade for James Harden if you can. I know a lot of people will probably think that one's pretty evident, but I just wanted to put it out there just for anyone that wasn't aware. James Harden is probably going to be the only person I wouldn't really trade for James Harden is Nikola Jokic right now, and Giannis. Outside of that, I probably would trade any player in the league to get James Harden. I'd probably rank him third right now if I updated my rankings. But yeah, even when Kevin Durant comes back, that is quite a ways down the line, like I mentioned. And just for the current weeks, if you're not going to make the playoffs, or if you're not in first and you're really trying to push for a better playoff spot or anything, I think James Harden is one of the great players that can help you do that. So if you look at recent trades involving James Harden, there haven't been too many as of late. The only ones I'm seeing here are like obviously just from joke leagues where people are just dicking around, so not too much to go off there. But like I mentioned, any top 10 player I would trade for him in a 1v1, 1-for-1 outside of Jokic and Giannis. And yeah, overall, great time to trade for Harden. You could probably do some 2-for-1s for him as well. Those ones are a bit more complicated and I can't really give you a lot of detail because, you know, there's so many combinations you can make. It's very league dependent on how he's valued and everything. But yeah, for me, I'm putting James Harden as like the third best fantasy player for the next few weeks, and I would highly recommend trading for him if you can get him on your team. Alright, so next up, it wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't talk about Domantas Sabonis. And the reason I mainly think that you should be targeting him in trades right now is just because they just recently announced that Miles Turner is going to be missing time with a foot injury. And as we're well aware at this point, if you're new to watching the NBA or anything, whenever a player gets like a phantom injury out of nowhere right before the trade deadline, it's most likely that they're just going to be traded. And we already know about all of the rumors surrounding the Pacers. They're talking about trading like Turner, Sabonis, and LeVert. And normally I don't put too much weight into these things because you generally can never really predict what's going to happen at the trade deadline. But if we're just looking at this, I mean, he's getting a sore left foot, a second opinion. He's not playing right now. This does give me reason to believe that we could see Turner on the move. Even more, like obviously outside of the report, this just makes me think that they'll probably have like a trade lined up for him, because this is just a very common theme with NBA teams. And who knows, maybe I'll be wrong and he'll end up staying and he actually does just have a sore foot. But you know, call me a cynic because I'm pretty confident that he's probably going to be on the move. And that just really opens up the floor for Domantas Sabonis. Like, guy's just an all-around fantasy stud. I mean, if you're new to the channel, like I talk about him in like every single one of my videos. One of my favorite fantasy players. So consistent, the rebounding rate, the assists, the points. Very solid. And if we look at some recent trades involving him, he was traded in a 1-for-1 for Jaylen Brown and for Pascal Siakam. And I'm expecting Domantas Sabonis to be up around like 44 plus fantasy points per game if Turner gets moved and he stays. Like I said, we can't predict if they're both going to stay, but just operating off this recent news with Turner, I am pretty like confident in trading for Domantas Sabonis right now. I always like having him on my fantasy teams, as you guys well know, but this is just like an even better situation, so highly recommend trading for him right now. I think it's a great opportunity, and I mean, even if Turner stays, he is still one of the most consistent fantasy players game in and game out, so can't ask for much more. But yeah, I think hopefully that clears it up why I think you should trade for him even more than I normally advocate for. But even then, If Turner stays, like I mentioned, everybody on the Pacers stays. I'm still taking Domantas Sabonis. He's currently inside of the top 10 in terms of total fantasy points. Do I think he'll finish top 10? If Turner moves, absolutely. If not, I don't think he falls any further than like top 15. So just having that consistent all-around production night in and night out is a huge asset to your fantasy team, especially if you're struggling to make the playoffs or if you're on the verge of making the playoffs. Just having that consistency will really help you out. So that's why he is the second player that I would try to trade for in your fantasy leagues. All right, moving on, we have the literal definition of a buy low player, and it's going to be Steph Curry. Steph is still easily top 10 in terms of total fantasy points that he's going to score in the year. I mean, we've seen him. He does have some slumps, as rare as they may be. Sometimes he just can't hit a shot. And we're talking about like the greatest shooter of all time right now. I am not concerned in the slightest about Steph Curry. I am 100% confident he's going to bounce back. And if we just look at like his recent averages, like last 15 days, he's averaging around 34 fantasy points per game. And there's just no way that that's going to maintain. He was averaging around 50 before this absolutely terrible stretch that he went on. But yeah, if you have Curry on your team, do not trade him. I mean, he's going to bounce back. Every single person is going to be trying to buy low from you right now. And if you don't have Curry on your team, I mean, you might as well sauce the offer. Maybe they're going to start getting hesitant because it has been a bit of an extended period now. There's been about like 8 or so games that he's been like below normal Steph Curry levels. And I mean, maybe some people that's enough to panic, especially if you're giving them like some other top 10 players or like close to that value. So some guys I would look at trading for Steph Curry. I would try like a Jayson Tatum, Fred VanVleet. I think that's a good trade if you can capitalize on his hot stretch to go for Steph Curry. And then even like guys I already mentioned like Domantas Sabonis, LaMelo Ball, Donovan Mitchell, Karl Anthony Towns. I think him and Steph are pretty close. I slightly prefer Towns, I want to say, but him and Steph are like neck and neck in my current rankings, so not too much like of a trade-off there. But yeah, anyone like that I mentioned, I would definitely be okay with trading for Steph Curry. And looking at recent trades for him, we have one for Karl Anthony Towns and a 1-for-1. Like I said, that one's pretty even. It could go either way. And then there's a 1-for-2 where he was traded for Donovan Mitchell and Tyler Hero. In that situation, I still probably would prefer Steph Curry unless you're in like a 14-team league or something and your waivers are dry, you know what I mean? But overall, I just think this is a peak time to buy low on Steph Curry before he starts turning it all around and going back to his like prime form, because like he was in the MVP race. It's sort of quieted down on this stretch. I don't think there's any way that this lasts for any longer of a run of time than we've currently seen. It's only a matter of time before he finds his jump shot again, and you might as well take advantage of the opportunity and get him on your team if you can. Alright, moving on, biased ass Celtics fan talking about Jayson Tatum, another great player that I would highly recommend trading for right now. He's been super inconsistent as of late. Like his numbers are all over the place. He'll have like a 77 fantasy point game and then go to a 25, 14, 62. It's just all over the place. But with Tatum, I mean, we all know he had a slow start to the season and he's slowly been working his average back up. I expect that trend to continue. He will sort of start to like get these wrinkles out of his game and start producing at a consistent fantasy rate. He does this from occasionally like every year in fantasy, and then he goes on a stretch like around post All-Star break where he's just absolutely ridiculous, putting up like top 8 fantasy points per game. And I mean, you can't trust the trend to continue every year, but I do have confidence that Tatum will figure it out from a fantasy perspective, start putting up some more efficient shooting nights, sort of figure out the all-around game. His rebounding rate's been pretty solid as of late as well. He's averaging around 11 rebounds per game the last 7 days. And yeah, I do think he's going to figure out the jump shot thing, try to get to the rim a bit more. His assists are not going to increase that much in my opinion. They're probably going to stay around 4 per game, which is what they're at right now. And yeah, overall, I just think it is going to become a more consistent performer. And if your team's struggling for playoffs, or maybe you're just trying to get that next piece that'll take elevate your team's level a little bit, I do think Tatum is a good place to look, just because it's a bit of a buy low opportunity due to the inconsistencies that I mentioned. So in terms of players I would offer for him, I would offer DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine, one of those Bulls for him. I think that would be a good trade if you could pull that off. Darius Garland for Tatum. I would prefer to have Tatum on my team, so that's another solid trade if you could find someone to take that offer on. And then other guys around his value or around his average that I would trade for him. There's a recent trade, Anthony Edwards for Jayson Tatum. As good as Edwards has been as of late, and he's been super consistent, I would still prefer to have Jayson Tatum on my team. Just me personally. Like, this is all my opinion. I feel like I need to start like prefacing the videos with that, because some people have been getting hella mad. This is just my opinion. You don't have to listen to it if you don't want to. No, nobody's gonna blame you, you know. I'm just giving you my 2 cents, what I would do. You don't have to do the same thing. Just let me know in the comments if you disagree and why. Another guy I would trade for Tatum, probably like Bradley Beal. I would prefer to have Tatum on my team. And yeah, that's a few targets that are like around his value that I would target in 1-for-1s. And then if you have any questions about 2-for-1s, just join the Discord like I mentioned, put the questions in there, and I'll answer them or somebody else will. There's like 1,000 people in there, so I'm sure someone can help you out. But yeah, that's going to explain why I think Tatum is a buy low player, and I would definitely look at trading for him right now. Alright, so the last player I want to talk about is CJ McCollum, who's just returning from the collapsed lung. It looks like he's off the injury report for Monday's game against the Orlando Magic. And for those of you who are new to fantasy, or just new in general to watching the NBA, whenever Damian Lillard goes out or misses games, CJ McCollum turns into an absolute beast for fantasy. The only reason that he's like a mid kind of like good player in fantasy perspective, like he averages around 36 fantasy points per game on the season. So it's like kind of like that in between, like yeah, he's good, but he's not like the 40 tier and up, which is like great players for fantasy. And when Lillard misses games, I do think CJ sort of enters that level of play. I do value him a lot higher, especially with Lillard missing an extended period of time. I don't see them in any rush to bring him back. People ask me if I think he's going to play this season or not. I'm more on the side that I don't really see why they would bring him back. There doesn't seem to be a lot of incentive to do that. He's going to be reevaluated in 5 weeks, but even then we don't know if he's going to be back after that. We don't know how that evaluation is going to look. If they're not going to make the playoffs, or even if they like barely make the play-in, why would you risk Dame's health at that point? Like, you might as well just wait for next season. But in the meantime, I do think CJ benefits massively from his absence. Him and Anthony Simons. Simons is another, like, he's probably a league winner if you got him off waivers, if you were lucky enough to. I got him in one of my leagues, and I mean, you know what I'm talking about. Like, the last few games, he's just been going absolutely insane. 64 fantasy points against Washington, 42 against Brooklyn, 48 against Sacramento. It's just ridiculous, man. He's doing what we thought Dame would this year, so it's good that somebody on the Trailblazers could do it, because Dame was piss poor to start the season, and then he got hurt. Or, I mean, he was hurt the whole time, I guess, so we can kind of cut him some slack. But yeah, CJ McCollum, I do think he's going to average around 40 fantasy points per game for the duration of the season, so if you can make a trade for him right now, I do consider him a buy low, because I think we are going to see his value start increasing very soon, as he is back next game, so I definitely try to throw some offers in for him. There haven't been any trades involving him recently other than like a 3-for-2, which isn't that helpful. So I can't give you like an exact trade that's gone down, but if we look at people to trade for him, anyone that's averaging around like 36 or 35 fantasy points per game, maybe like a DeAndre Ayton or a John Collins, I would be perfectly comfortable trading either of them for CJ. I'm just betting that we're going to see a little bit of an increase in CJ's value, like I mentioned, and I'm willing to take that risk, because at the very worst, he's going to be averaging what he's at right now. So that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully it helps you guys out in terms of like deciding who you should target in some trades. We're going to start making more fantasy playoff content soon. I know there's still a few weeks to go, but never too early to start looking ahead to the playoffs. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you don't want to miss any of the videos. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. And as always, I hope you all have a great rest of your day.